Hey guys, so on this episode of Make It with Calvin, I'm going to talk you through getting a new tube here for my K40 laser and some of the challenges that I ran into. So if you have to do a tube replacement and you're putting in a true 40 watt tube, here are some things to look out for based on my experience, but I'm not saying that yours will be identical. So let's dive into it. Okay, so in short, I bought a new tube for the laser. I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but what I will say is definitely make sure you're buying a tube that has a return policy, as the problem that I ran into is there's a lot of sellers selling tubes, but the quality of them is all over the place, and if you're desperate to get your machine up and running again, I hate to say it, for these really cheap ones, it might be cheaper just to buy another machine as a replacement and then, work on the other one. But that's all up to you. I'm not telling you what to do, so, work within your means. That's all I'm going to say. That being said, though, when I eventually found the tube that is the one that is living in here, I ran into a couple of challenges, and I want to kind of talk you guys through them so that way you're not stuck like I was going, oh no, wow, this is more work than I thought it was going to be. So the one obvious thing that you're going to have to do if you replace the tube, regardless of if you run into the other problems that I have, is you're going to have to realign the mirrors, because obviously nothing is going to be perfect. Now, depending upon how much things have shifted, this will either be a very tiny amount, or it could be up to a couple hours of frustration. And in the future, I am going to be testing a tool that claims that it makes aligning the mirrors easier. We're going to get into that, but what I did is I just used the classic burn a hole in a piece of masking tape, adjust the mirror, burn a hole, did it move, all that stuff. It is not my favorite way of doing things, but it does work. There's a ton of videos online about it, so I'm just going to leave it at that. That said, though, the biggest challenges that I ran into are the fact that a true 40 watt tube, which is not what these machines come with, is a lot longer and a lot larger in the diameter. And let me talk you through the problems that caused. Now, the first problem, obviously being length, is the true 40 watt tube sticks out according to where I am, right-hand side of the laser. So you can't see it, and it's nothing spectacular, but I just 3D printed a plastic end cap, and that helps protect the end of the tube. But do note, it can be a tight fit with the wires and the water hose and all that stuff, so bear that in mind. Thankfully, mine also had a removable cover on the side. It's almost like they knew that you were going to eventually do this, but check on your laser before you start to do anything to make sure you have that, and proceed from there. Now, I was thankfully able to use the stock tube mounts in here. The only problem is the tube had to be raised up about 3/16 of an inch to get the output beam to fire straight into the center of the first mirror, which is important. I mean, if you hit slightly off to the center, it's not going to kill things, but you want to shoot as close to the center of the mirror as possible. So to correct for that, I just used the stock mounts, but I 3D printed myself a simple spacer, and I'll have a link to that down in the description below. That honestly made my life so much easier. Once I printed that up, I fired the beam and it hit almost dead on in the first mirror. I'm like, oh, perfect. Now we're off to the races. So that honestly really made my life a whole lot easier. Now, lastly, and honestly, this is the most important part from a safety standpoint, you're going to need a way to connect up the laser. And let me tell you, the 30-ish thousand volts that is required to trigger these lasers makes some photonic induction-sized and loud arcs. I'm talking, I had an arc this long jumping from the heat shrink tubing that I thought was going to hold up that didn't, to the metal case of the laser. Thankfully, I was not touching the laser. It is grounded, but still, we're dealing with some scary voltages here. So make sure that you get the appropriate high voltage connectors. A lot of the tubes seem to come with them, but if you're not sure, contact the seller, make sure it does. You can find them all over Amazon and other websites. This one is nice because it just requires me to twist the two wires together, and then I just slide the silicone housing over and twist it shut, and it's sealed up. It works great. I don't have any problems. There are other styles that have metal connectors inside. I personally prefer this. It's more than adequate. Mine actually also came with just this little ceramic piece here, which is also very effective, that I'm using on the low-ish voltage output. Now, one other thing I should say is some of the tubes require you to connect the wires to the graphite connectors. If you can get a tube that has the wires pre-installed, personally, that's money well spent. Mine had that. But those are just some things to keep in mind if you're going to do a tube replacement on your machine. I also recommend, while you're doing that, if there are other things you want to do, say change out the optics or open up the back of the laser so you can get some better airflow, now would definitely be a good time to do things like that, because you don't want to do anything that could potentially damage the tube. And let's face it, you're going to have to realign the mirrors anyways, so, just things to keep in mind. So I hope you guys found this helpful. I will say, hopefully this new tube will last me a lot longer than the old one. It should, being it's a true 40-watt tube. And to be fair, I think I have come to the conclusion that when this particular laser tube craps out, I'm probably at that point going to honestly make the decision of, is it worth it to just keep buying a new tube? Or can I justify getting a much larger, maybe more powerful, mostly I want a larger laser so I can actually cut, layout bases, large scale train components, things like that. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions about laser tube replacement, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. But I'll be honest, I am not an expert, and a lot of this is stuff that you have to feel out yourself. But if you have general questions, I might be able to answer them. Also, if you've had to do a tube replacement yourself and you have some helpful advice, please leave that down below. I feel like the more good information that is out there, the more informed decisions people can make when it comes to purchasing these machines, and also potential future problems they may have. So, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you here next time on Make It with Calvin with maybe some more laser projects.